Nietzsche's Twilight of the Idols. I'm going to be reading a few passages from this section, Morality as Anti-Nature. Nietzsche says, "The church fights passion by cutting it out in every sense. Its practice, its therapy, is castration. It never asks, how does one spiritualize, beautify, deify a desire? Its discipline has always emphasized eradication of sensuality, pride, the ambition to rule, covetousness, vengefulness, by ripping out the passions by the root. But ripping out the passions by the root means ripping out life by the root. The practice of the church is an enemy to life. The same means castration, eradication is instinctively chosen in the struggle against a desire by those who are too weak-willed, too degenerate to modify their own desire, etc., etc. Radical means are indispensable only for degenerates. Having a weak will, or more precisely, being incapable of not reacting to a stimulus, is itself just another form of degeneration. I put a principle into a formula. All naturalism and morality, that is, all healthy morality, is ruled by an instinct of life. Some decree of life is fulfilled by a particular canon of shall and shall not. Some restriction and hostility on life's path is thereby shoved aside. Anti-natural morality, that is, almost every morality that has been taught, honored, and preached up to now, instead turns precisely against the instincts of life. It is a sometimes hidden, sometimes loud and bold condemnation of these instincts. By saying God looks into the heart, it says no to the lowest and highest desires of life and takes God to be life's enemy. The saint in whom God delights is the ideal eunuch. Life ends where the kingdom of God begins." When we speak of values, we speak under the inspiration, under the optics of life. Life itself is forcing us to posit values. Life itself is valuing by means of us when we posit values. Morality, insofar as it condemns on its own grounds and not from the point of view of life's perspectives and objectives, is a specific error for which one should have no sympathy, an idiosyncrasy of degenerates, which has done an unspeakable amount of harm. In contrast, we others, we immoralists, that is, we so-called immoralists, have opened our hearts wide to every form of understanding, comprehending, approving. We do not easily negate. We seek our honor in being those who affirm. We, so-called immoralists, who critique morality, we are actually affirmers, not pure critics. We criticize only to affirm, and specifically to affirm life. Okay, what is going on in this section of the Twilight of the Idols? Morality as anti-nature. It's fairly clear that this is a critique of Christian sexual ethics. Nietzsche thinks it's an anti-life kind of ethics. Where does life come from? Where does new life come from? From sex. And what does Christianity critique, seek to control, perhaps to eradicate? Sex. Or at least sexual desire. And this is not to be restricted so narrowly. This is a more general critique of Christian ethics, and in fact it's a more general critique of all traditional morality, or that is to say, all ethics that resist human desire and human will. Life creates desire and will. Traditional morality, whether Platonic, Christian, Kantian, etc., traditional morality tends to deny both desire and will. Now, this is Nietzsche's critique. I don't think this is at all fair to Christian ethics. For example, Augustine is all about the affirmation of desire, not by any means the eradication, perhaps the healing, perhaps the redirection. The Nietzschean language here, it never asks, how does one spiritualize, beautify, deify a desire? That's precisely what Augustine asks. You see a nice depiction of this in The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis, where the lizard thing, representing base lust, turns into a stallion that carries a soul off to heaven. So I don't think this is an accurate critique of traditional morality, at least not of Christian morality. But anyway, this is Nietzsche's critique of traditional morality. But this is also one of his clearest statements of his own ethics. Yes, Nietzsche has an ethics. The ethics is the affirmation of life. And there's not much else we really need to say about it. Nietzsche's ethics is to affirm life. We can say a little bit more about the materialism and the psychology that is connected to this ethics, and we can clarify one or two things. When Nietzsche says affirm life and anti-natural morality that resists human desire and human will is unhealthy and bad and comes from a degenerate, declining form of life, he's not saying that what we should do is indulge all our desires, try to get as much food, drink, sex, or whatever it is. Most of us probably go with sex. Try to get as much as possible eat all the ice cream you can as quickly as you can. He's not saying that. That's not healthy either. A healthy desire has an ascetic streak. A-S-C-E-T-I-C, an ascetic streak, A-S-C-E-T-I-C. Healthy morality is able to resist some desires. How does he put it? The same means castration, eradication of desire is instinctively chosen in the struggle against a desire by those who are too weak-willed, too degenerate to modify their own desires. A healthy morality will deal with some obstacle on life's way. A healthy morality will, by some particular canon of shall and shall not, some set of rules saying you shall do this, you shall not do that, which will moderate or control or resist certain human desires. A healthy morality that does this is doing so in order that some restriction and hostility on life's path may be thereby shoved aside. In other words, healthy morality is prepared to resist our desires, but it is done so out of the affirmation of life. And the crucial, well, one really crucial point is that Nietzsche's materialistic psychological analysis of morality posits that a moral theory is itself produced by life. Life itself posits values through us. Life itself is forcing us to posit values. Life itself is valuing by means of us when we posit values. And an unhealthy life is the subconscious source that Nietzsche is trying to expose. An unhealthy, weak form of life is the unconscious source Nietzsche is trying to expose for those moralities that focus on denying the instincts of life. A healthy morality would affirm life, because a healthy morality comes from a healthy life which is strong enough to affirm itself, to assert itself, a life which is healthy enough to love life. And again, that does not mean that all our desires are affirmed. No, but there's a difference between one ascetic and another ascetic, A-S-C-E-T-I-C. An ascetic is someone who denies physical desires. One will do so out of a hatred for life. Picture the monk who self-flagellates. The guy who whips himself. Maybe you've seen such a character in a movie. Or the monk, maybe a Buddhist monk, maybe a Christian monk, who denies all desires and practically starves himself, maybe literally starves himself because he thinks the body is evil, all physical desires are evil, I must overcome and escape them. Perhaps so that my soul may then flutter off to heaven without the body. A healthy asceticism will deny physical desires out of a love of life, because it's healthier. Out of self-affirmation, not out of self-denial, but out of affirmation of self. I am strong enough. This is Nietzschean asceticism. A-S-C-E-T-I-S. A-S-C-E-T-I-S-M, asceticism. Nietzschean asceticism will deny desires, not out of denial of self, but out of self-affirmation. Certain desires will be denied because the strong Nietzschean ascetic will say, I am so strong and so awesome that I don't even need those things. It's not that. My body is evil, my desires are evil, I am evil, therefore I must deny my desires for sex, ice cream, or whatever. The Nietzschean ascetic will say, I am so awesome, I don't even need sex or ice cream. Again, the Nietzschean ascetic might realize that certain things are obstacles on the path of life. Some desires are perhaps a restriction and hostility on life's path which need to be set aside. Maybe some desires are just not healthy enough, or some desires are getting in the way of my affirmation of myself in my own life. My own project for my own life does not involve indulgence in certain things, so I refuse them. But again, not out of self-denial, but out of self-affirmation. That's the Nietzschean ascetic way. And the fundamental principle, the central principle, and a two-word summary of a whole lot of Nietzsche is affirm life.